Well, hello again. It's been a bit since I've made an Oloro video, so I definitely wanted to do that. I haven't made any changes to the deck. I'm going to scroll up a bit so you can get the numbers. But basically, there are some cards I'm interested in testing. The one that jumps out at me the most right now is from Magic Origins, and it's the 2-mana Jace. Although it conflicts with the 4-mana Jace, you can't have them both in play at the same time, and it doesn't work if Humility's already in play. The fact that it'll flip if you draw it in the right order, and then can subsequently play Humility and still use the card, seems pretty decent to me. Um, I'm not sure that it's going to be amazing, and if it's not amazing, it doesn't belong in here. But I'm interested in finding out. That's the point of testing. So when I figure out how to get enough tickets to be able to pick one up, I'll put it in here and test it out, and we'll be able to talk about how that works out. Meanwhile, these were my games for the week, 10 of them. So let's get going. And the first game here is against Arkham Angel, playing, I think he's playing Sidisi. Yeah, so I had to take a mulligan. My first hand had no lands at all, no mana at all. Sidisi here is not the best commander. The best one is the 4 mana, I think, excuse me, uh, 4 is a 4/4 commander in the same colors. I think it's 6 or 7 mana. But at the end, you skip your draw phase, and at the end of your upkeep, you draw up to 7, you refill your hand up to 7 cards. I think that's by far better than this guy because a big hand refill like that can just be game over, whereas some chumpy little dorks is nothing. So anyway, but although Seduci may be better in multiplayer, I don't really know. It's not important to me. Anyhow, I have decided to keep this hand here going first, and I like the fact that Brian actually got them to fix the player draw rules so that you don't both play and draw. So I get turn 2 Shackles down, thinking that in his colors there's a decent chance that he might be playing either a counter spell, which I want to run the Shackles out ahead of time for, or just something cheap like Bird of Paradise, etc. I suspect that may have been what happens here because he scooped. Maybe he realized that his hand is going to be very difficult to execute on when there's a Shackles in play. Alternately, perhaps he just realized that I'm playing a control deck and he's just one of those players that doesn't like to play control decks. So, no big deal. Moving on to the next game, I was facing Potentia Novum, whose commander is, let's find out. Oh, Maelstrom Wanderer, something we haven't seen in a while. It used to be, in some of the older recordings, you'd see Maelstrom Wanderer sometimes back to back to back. And I haven't seen him in, I want to say, months, perhaps. So anyway, this hand is absolutely ridiculous, so I am going to be keeping. And we'll see how Maelstrom Wanderer does against almost perfect draw. So I go first turn. I decided to go ahead and just get the Scroll Rack out instead of the Mana Vault because a little more mana would have allowed me to play a turn 2 Oloro, but I figured I'd rather have Scroll Rack and I could wait a turn because I have the Stoic Rebuttal. I was kind of glad for that because I was able to rack away the Cyclonic Rift and then that I drew, and then still play the Mana Vault, fetch into the colors that I needed, and I can still cast the Oloro turn 2 anyway, so it didn't matter. So he had suspended Ancestral Visions. We can keep an eye on that and see how relevant that's going to be. Normally a first turn suspended Ancestral Visions, I mean, besides being the best that you can do, should be pretty doggone good, but my hand is getting a little sound leakage. I'm not sure why. But if that comes up again, we'll keep suspended Ancestral Visions, but he missed a land drop, so of course, when I get the Wasteland, I immediately attack. Muted. Let's try again. Okay. So yeah, and then on his turn, he's just sitting on Ancestral Visions. He has no, excuse me, still trying to figure out this sound issue. Boy, that's frustrating. He still has no mana, though, so, and I'm using I'm able to use Score Rack to just continuously make my hand better and better. Um, so now, of course, I've got Tezzeret down, I've got Gilded Lotus down, still sitting on a counter spell. So 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 mana to 0. Pretty good. Probably, unless you count Tezzeret's activations, 21 mana to 0. Just slightly ahead, I guess you could say. So I'm just in with the commander. I'm drawing 2 cards per turn, and then gross things with Imperial Seal. And I know for a fact that this is not what my hand looked like. What I did here was, this is going to bug out. What I did here was I just let him draw, because the only thing he could draw, the only thing I'd expect him to be able to do with the number of cards that he had no play with the 7 cards, so he could hit 1 land drop, Soul Ring or Mana Crypt most likely, something, to ramp up and then discard down to 7 at best. Any less than that certainly isn't going to get him anywhere. And what you don't see in my hand, what I did have in my hand, the correct cards, was Mind Twist. So the idea here was just let him go ahead and take the 3 cards and then put them all in his graveyard, and instead of wasting a counterspell on it. But at any rate, my opponent went ahead and conceded there. He could have scooped a little bit sooner, of course, having missed land drops. Like I said, 21 mana to 0, probably safe to scoop, but I think he was just curious to see what he got with the Ancestral. And the truth is, it would have been more correct for me to counter the Ancestral regardless, just to make sure he didn't get, Mana Crypt and Soul Ring and such. But I figured the only reason he stuck around was to draw the 3 cards, so I might as well let him do it. And then Mind Twisted. So, anyway, this guy is playing Brago, and I get to go first again. So, and this is obviously an excellent hand. It's got defenses for days. It's got ways to improve the hand through the use of Condescend. And, of course, Scroll Rack now. So my opponent plays Mastery of the Unseen. Pretty interesting, but also irredeemably slow. 4 mana with this 4 mana, even at instant speed, I think, just to get a 2/2 into play seems pretty awful. The only way that it's any good is if, see, with Brago, he can exile non-land permanents and then flip them. So I actually admire the creativity here, because what this mastery allows him to do is to hit me with Brago and then exile any manifested cards, and then they'll come back as the flipped version. So he could do pretty gross stuff like manifest a giant Eldrazi and then hit me with Brago and boom, it flips. Kind of like almost like an illusionary mask Phyrexian Dreadnought combo. But 4 mana is very slow, and because of that, I've got Utter End in hand. I'm not super worried about it, so I'm not going to waste a Force of Will on that. I'd rather just stop the Brago that actually makes it good. So on his turn, he gets Relic of Progenitus. I'm not going to fight over that. Sure, it's on my graveyard. I mean, I have Mystical Teachings, but who cares? So I go ahead and just stick back a bunch of cards that I want, and find a Brainstorm, and then Brainstorm into them. And so as you can see, by the end of his turn, my hand's looking very good, minus not having the land. Still, it's in good shape, and when he goes for Lantern, I'm going to try to work on that land situation. I Condescend, tuck some of the cards that were on top, which were not lands, and then go ahead and Scroll Rack deep, and find myself 2 lands there. So now, after drawing my card, I play a land and a Talisman, say go, sitting on a counterspell, and at the end of his turn, Scroll Rack again, and then drop myself a land. So now I've got a Teferi sitting on top, which I'd like to get into play. I don't play Future Sight here because I am comfortable. I feel I'm winning this game. My hand is getting very, very good. I'm under no pressure whatsoever. And I can wait in order to run Future Sight out with both a Deprive and Force of Will backup, which seems better to me. So he goes ahead and relics away my Condescend. Or I can try and do what I decide to do next turn. I think I can run out to Fairy with Force of Will backup. If he taps down too low to counter it, then I force it. then immediately on to ferry my mana, and then I'm able to defend my position. So end of his turn, I go ahead and now that it's pretty clear that he's going to do nothing and try to end step manifest, I retrieve the other end that I had tucked away at the scroll rack and target his Mastery of the Unseen with utter end. Excuse me. So the reason I'm doing that now on his turn is in the hopes that he taps out and tries to get something in response. He decides to take the bait. So while he gets he's up a card technically. He's up a 2/2 creature. Um, he's tapped out and he has no defenses, and that means down comes the fairy. And then I immediately decide that instead of untapping for permanence and chilling out with the deprive, I decide I'm going to +1 it and draw Future Sight into my hand and just allow him to attack the fairy with the manifested creature and use Force of Will as my shield against what I expect would be a Brago play this turn. He surprises me by playing Wall of Omens instead. Quite happy to see that. He attempts to Rift to Fairy, and then I don't really understand exactly why he rifted and conceded, but my suspicion here is he rifted to Fairy and then realized how absolutely useless that is since I'm sitting on 6 mana. You can't rift it on my turn because I'll have mana to counter, and you can't really rift it on his turn because I'll have mana to cast it. So I think the frustration of being put in that situation is what caused him to concede there. At any rate, I definitely take Seamus the Pirate's concession and move on to the next game in which I was playing Burn the Obedient here. You would assume his deck will be red, but it turns out it's black. He's playing Geth, Lord of the Vault. I think that card is not very good. It makes assumptions that may not be true. Make the assumption that you're going to be able to put artifacts or creatures from your opponent's graveyard. You're going to have to put them into his graveyard, and then you're going to have the mana to retrieve them, all while somehow getting a 6 mana sorcery creature into play. That's a lot of work. The best way to do all of that would be to run a heavy element of discard to put targets in the graveyard while paving the way for Geth. But that card that's a lot of work, and you could have just played Skithrix and probably killed your opponent in 1 to 2 hits instead. So it's just one of those cards that obviously I kept, and obviously my hand's fantastic. Opponent plays a Mana Crypt here, which I gave some thought to casting for a bit on, most likely with buyback. But because I have Empiric Tutor in my hand and I'm in pretty good shape, I decided to let it go. And then he goes for a Diabolic Tutor, which is fine. He's only got 1 mana left, and he decides that he's going to also Soul Ring, and that's of course going to get leaked because of it. Oh, excuse me. I thought that would get leaked because it's pretty much my only opportunity to mana leak. I suppose I had something better in mind. We'll find out what that will be. This is a game I played yesterday or a couple days ago, so it'll be a surprise to me. Let's see what I've Empiric Tutored for. Oh, okay. I see what I was thinking. So I guess the point here was that he's down to 3 cards. So, like, once I decided to let the Mana Crypt go, then I gave up on the Suppresses mana plan, and now I'm on the Suppresses cards plan. Beat him. He's got 3 cards, and I've got effectively 3 counters. And then he's got his commander, but I've got Humility. So pretty much my thinking was, I remember now, if I resolve Humility, I'd probably win the game. So all I have to do is just protect my hand and just let him have whatever else he wants to do. He goes for Caged Sun, however. Now, while I was trying to, I was thinking that I would not have an opportunity to mana leak any further in this game due to the amount of mana he had with Crypt and Soul Ring. But when he plays a Caged Sun, that gives me a window. So I'm definitely going to leak that. And not only does it give me a target that I can hit right now, but if a Caged Sun resolved, probably not leaking anything becomes a near definite. Interestingly enough, unfortunately, like the other players, this is another person who decides to concede before the games realistically could be called. But we'll just move on and see what else happens. I don't know if this is one of those guys that just, I don't know if his hands is that bad or if he's one of those players that just absolutely hates blue or what the story is on that. And I didn't stick around long enough to find out. So we'll move on to game 5. Hopefully I've got some better games in here. I'm actually not sure. Like I said, I just played this a little while ago, but I just wanted to get some, video out so that with Oloro again, so that we had something going since it's been a little while. So here we're playing Selvala, Explorer Returned, and I do think this is an interesting card. It's kind of like, um, well, I mean, it's like a 3-mana Soul Ring. Um, the problem with it is it's not blue, of course, but beyond that, I think the other problem is that if you really want to play those colors, you probably want to be playing either, I think it's Gerard, the 4-mana. It's two colorless, green and a white. Taps to search for a legendary permanent, which you can then tap to go get Gaia's Cradle. I think you either want to be playing that or Gaddock Teague, and between the two, I think the Legendary Searcher is better because it taps to go get Gaddock Teague. So this Selvala runs into the issue of also possibly feeding your opponent cards that you don't want to be giving him, although you both get a card, so it's not as bad as it seems at first. You also get extra mana on your turn, so you should theoretically have an advantage. But I just don't think it's as good as the constant tutoring for Legends. So anyway, I first turned Imperial Sealed. I gave some thought to getting Mishra's Workshop, but I realized that I wouldn't be able to play turn 2 Gilded Lotus, of course. So if I have to play Lotus on turn 3 anyway, I might as well go get Mana Crypt. It's just better to be able to play both the land and a Mana Crypt. And because it's a little odd, but because my opponent doesn't know my hand, we know looking at my hand that I do not want to Course Will of Mystical Teachings, but my opponent does not know that. And I wanted to see if I could talk him into not casting his commander here, or at least not doing anything severely dangerous. So I Merchant Scroll to show him the Force of Will. He plays his commander, that does not qualify as dangerous to me. So I go ahead and play. You're also going to see another reason why that commander is probably not so great. So I go ahead and play Gilded Lotus, and then I haven't played a third land, obviously. So I go ahead and drop tax into play. Now I could have cast Enlightened Tutor here, but the problem is, if you think about it, if I had cast Enlightened Tutor off the mana floating, then I can't tax during upkeep, and I think taxing seemed more important to me, since I can just tutor during upkeep anyway. Saving the 1 mana, probably not as good as the 3 cards. Especially since if I don't hit a land drop, um, if I didn't hit a land drop, I wouldn't be saving any mana, because I'll spend a mana to tutor after taxing, and then tax will give me the mana back. It won't be white, it'll be blue, but quantity-wise, I'll have the same amount. So anyway, he drops True Conviction. So he's able to do this because his commander revealed Genesis Wave, which is something I need to keep in mind. And it also revealed the Dark Tutelage on my end. So he got 2 mana, because whenever it's a non-land permanent, he gets mana. So then he's able to play his 6-drop there, which is what makes the card interesting, I think, along with the card drawing. And this being a legendary creature, it's another target that you would go get with the card I was talking about earlier. I don't think it's Gerard, though. I think Gerard's 3 white, white. I think the card I'm thinking of is something else. But it's from that era. So anyway, upkeep, I'm going to go ahead and tax, and then tithe, not tithe, Enlightened Tutor into Scroll Rack. So now I've got Tax Rack running, and because I have Tax Rack running, I have absolutely no need to play Dark Tutelage, because, so I'm going to dump the 3 lands, hoping to hit another land, but I don't want to play basics, I want to play duels. And I'll dump Dark Tutelage because I don't need to draw extra cards. And wonderfully, we're going to bug out. Yeah, we're gonna bug out. Sorry. Anyway, long story short, his commander is a card he's always going to use during his main phase. It's obvious because it produces mana and draws a card, but the best thing for him to do is after he takes his initial draw step to activate his commander during his main phase. As a result of this, what I'm able to do with the Empiric Tutor at the opportune time is pull the trigger. In other words, on Terminus, he activates his commander in response to Empiric. His commander resolves because because Terminus is an online card. It gets revealed, and then I put it into my hand as a draw, which means Terminus fires, which means I get to dump his whole board um, using the power of his own commander against him. I get to do it on his turn, and that means I get even more mana for my turn to do other mean things. And of course, with Tax Rack going, I'm drawing 4 cards per turn for the low price of 1, which is the equivalent mathematically of casting 2 Ancestral Recalls on myself every turn for 1 mana. My opponent does not have a chance in that game. So here I'm playing against Dan. I hate the replay bug though. I hate the replay bug, I hate the sound bug. Magic Online. This company makes millions. Could they just fix Magic Online? Just a few simple fixes, please. They ought to just make it Twitch friendly, frankly, along with fixing the replay bug. So anyway, this guy's playing Kemba Regent, which is actually a pretty decent mono white commander, although I don't think it's necessarily the best. Don't want to really think about what might be the best, mainly because I would never play mono white ever. So it just doesn't interest me. I mean, it's not a really great brain exercise for me to try to puzzle out what's good and bad like build. However, I will say that I have a friend who did build a mono white deck that was it was basically hate bears, full of excellent cards to pressure your opponent's mana with and resources. It was definitely the best mono white deck I've ever seen. It was a guy called Unique. If you ever see him online, you could ask him to play his mono white deck against you if you're interested in checking it out. But even so, mono white is not super exciting, and I do think I have a few games against the Meek where you might be able to see what I'm talking about. Anyway, so in order to, because I know that after I play my second land and he plays his second land, I know that he can't play his commander, so I go, if I strip mine one of his lands, so I use Elimdul's Vault end of turn in order to go get strip mine and set up my next draw, which was a Mana Crypt. That's why I really like Elimdul's Vault. I think it's much better than I think it's given credit for typically. It's also really annoying to use online because it forces you to reshuffle after every mix of 5 cards. I mean, it forces you to order them even though you reshuffle. But that being said, Lindell's Vault is pretty amazing. I knew I wanted the first 2 cards, but not the rest. So it's basically like I doubled Empiric Tutor. And so on my turn, so I end up using that power to get the Dark Confidant down, the Mana Crypt, to Mana Ramp, to get a Shackles into play and protect that Shackles. And I'm not really sure what the white equipment deck can do against Vedalken Shackles. Now, normally, I won't attack with an important creature, which most of mine are, Trinket Mages, but I won't do that when I'm facing a deck with white showing because Condemn is a card I don't want to fight over, and I have cards that are winning. I don't care about damage. But I have so many counters, and he's so, yeah, that's nice. He's so stuck on mana that I knew there was no way he could punish me, even if he had a Condemn. So that's why I started attacking. And he's in this pretty tough spot where he just keeps trying to remove my permanents, and because he's stuck, unable to play 2 cards per turn, he can't remove my permanents. So, in fact, he can't do anything except play cards that I will allow because they're equipment and they do nothing. Now, I imagine that you know by now what my Imperial Seal target was, but if you don't, pause it, see if you can puzzle it out. Here you go. It was Tezzeret. You might have been thinking, well, geez, you've got him almost completely strip mine locked. I'm giving it away, of course. So now I've got Crucible of Worlds. Well, yeah, but Tezzeret's just, if you have the choice between Tezzeret and Crucible of Worlds, you get Tezzeret, and then you fetch Crucible of Worlds, of course. Which is what I did, which of course we bugged out and you can't see it, but 5 mana, Tezzeret, activate for 3, that's why I did not play land. Replay Strip Mine, strip his land, opponent sends me Nasty Gram, and we move on with victory. And here I'm playing Patty Whacker, who won the dice roll, and he's playing, I don't know, which one is this? Dromoka the Eternal, which is not, which is incredibly beefy, but it's not the green-white commander I'd be playing. I'd be playing the one that can't be countered if I were going to play a green-white dragon, and I wasn't going to be playing the best card that we've already discussed in those colors. If for some reason I said I must play green-white and it must be a dragon, then I would play the one that can't be countered. It's a 4/7, has lifelink. That thing's great. I think that's a great card for. I think I've mentioned it before, but I would be playing that in Standard, honestly, if I played Standard. I would be playing it in my blue control deck with Splash of Green to run that thing, or a Splash of White. I'm not sure which color is the better support color in Standard. But so my opponent plays Echoes of the Kin Tree, and then he's playing Fertilid. Fertilid, of course, allows him to ramp up a little bit. So we're going to just keep digging. We don't want him ramping. And so then he goes for Fertilid again, I think. Or not. Oh, Explosive Vegetation. So I had to pause, read the card. Tapped? Yeah, absolutely. You can have Explosive Vegetation. And I go ahead and just tutor end step for Demonic. Because we want to Demonic into Crypt like usual. And now I can play Coalition Relic and Smackdown with the latest Smackdown with the Winter Orb. So at this point, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to 6 mana, depending on how Coalition Relic shakes down, is what I get for the rest of the game, and my opponent gets 1. And for that reason, my opponent concedes. I think that's probably a good plan right there. Very quick game. So here I'm playing Master of Disguise. At least I think it's Master of Disguise, but it might not be because... So this person's playing Sliver Overlord, which either means that they're playing a control deck with the wrong commander, it should be Sliver Queen, or they're playing a Sliver deck with the wrong commander, which should be Sliver Queen. But we'll find out. So I decide I'm going to keep, because it's the wrong commander, I assume he's playing Slivers, the real, like, actual Slivers. The reason I say this is a control player generally will not make such an obvious mistake. But a Sliver player tends to, because they think like, oh wow, I can search for a Sliver. That's really great. So just on that hunch, I decided I'm going to keep a slower hand, which it seems backwards, but against Sliver creatures, having the Force of Will and the Rift means that if he gets the first turn, I think I can't remember if it's turn 1 or turn 2, but there's a Sliver I think gives him Infect or Poison. I want to be able to counter that, but other than that, I don't care about Slivers at all. There's only there's a very small number of Slivers that actually matter. One of them is the Harmonic Sliver, the one that that Sage, the new Sage, the elf, Reclamation Sage. Harmonic Sliver is basically Reclamation Sage for all your Slivers. That thing's a beast. And Basal Sliver is not. Alright, so my hand's obviously getting better. He's tapped out. I'm going to go ahead and Winter Orb. The goal here is to try to get him to try to make a big play with Basal Sliver and then just bounce it back into his hand and leave him completely manuscript for the majority of the rest of the game. So I'm going to go ahead and take some damage. And because I'm trying to make that play, and because I have counter as a backup if it goes south for some reason, if his play somehow turns out to be like a big mind twist, then I'm just going to do nothing. He plays, see, this is what I'm talking about. This is all junk, right? Who cares? It's just useless damage. So we're just going to ignore him and do nothing. Um, so I get a Merchant Scroll and I scroll into Mana Drain. I actually don't really need Mana Drain here. The right play was probably to go get Mystical Teachings or Mystical Tutor so that I could Terminus at will. Or possibly even Lindell's Vault. But the reason I got Mana Drain is because um, I want to encourage him to sack his non-basal sliver to try to make a play that I could Mana Drain, and then save his big play for after. I kind of want to like rope him in to thinking that he knows how to get around. Like um, basically, it's one of two things. I either want him to try to invest in a big play on a single turn because I have both Mana Drain and Force of Will and a bounce spell, so that won't go well for him. Oh, and also Vindicate. Or I want him to do nothing. With Mana Drain in hand, it's quite likely opponent will just choose to do nothing for an indefinite time period, and then that just gives me as much time as I want to develop. All that in mind, what he decides to do is play Dormant Sliver, which is absolutely nuts of him to do. He just destroyed 4 of his lands, short term, 3 of his lands, and gave me one heck of a target for Vindicate. So I go after Basal Sliver, although I had planned to use it to rope him in. I don't know if he was F6ing or what, but he lets Basal Sliver die without sacking Dormant Sliver. So now all his slivers um, have Defender. So I pretty much just, you can have the stupid, oh, there's Harmonic, okay. So maybe he thought he was going to somehow deal with, I don't know, Winter Orb, although that doesn't really answer what he's going to do with Dormant Sliver there. I suppose if he dealt with Winter Orb, long term he could do something, but he goes for a Harmonic Sliver knowing I have the Mana Drain, which is really weird. And then I think at this point he realized, like, oh yeah, I should have sacked my guy with Basal Sliver, because he basically put a mode out for himself for the rest of the game. And I'm quite happy to just leave that in play. So, yeah. Anyway, here's the Dark Joker, one of the last 2 opponents that I have. The first of 2, I should say. Playing Riku of 2 Reflections. And I've got a mana-heavy draw, but I do have Cryptic Command to hopefully make it better, and I'm going first, so I decided I'm going to start off by thinning my deck of lands. Because the thinning is super minimal in a 100-card deck, I normally won't do that, but he didn't have an island in play, which means he couldn't stifle it, and I have another fetch land in case I draw a Brainstorm or a Scroll Rack or something, so I figured that would be fine. Or top, or any number of cards that works very well that way. So because I drew the Forbid, I can go ahead and play the Signet. And then because he played Doubling Cube, he still hasn't hit a blue, he hasn't done anything really like threatening. I go ahead and just tap down and play the Chromatic Lantern. Just my read on this situation is that me having 6 mana next turn is better than him having 3 mana next turn. I'm not super worried about what he can do with it. He did get to play the Izzet Signet because I didn't have a counterspell for it, which gave him access to blue. And then he plays Heartbeat of Spring, which is really interesting. The way he did that was he exiled the Simian Spirit Guide. So now, I think, yeah, so he used the guide in 2 lands to play Heartbeat, and then 2 mana from the forest to play the Signet. No, he did it backwards. He could have done that, and he would add an untapped Signet, but I suppose it's not super important. But regardless, that was a play he made. I've got extra mana now thanks to that, and I decide that although I could take advantage of it, 2, 4, 6, and play Oloro, and then sit on some, I could sit on 2, 3, 4, 5 mana, which would be enough to forbid and condescend for 1, or Cryptic Command. I want to bounce, I'm actually in good shape, and I want to bounce his Heartbeat right now. And the reason I want to do that is because, and I'm not going to float the mana here in cast Oloro because I don't want to tap down. I actually don't want this on the board. And the reason I'm doing that, and get rid of the Mana Flare, is because of the Doubling Cube that's in play. My fear is that he'll just be able to produce too much mana next turn, and he'll he could push me when it comes to my counters. He could play something like Maelstrom Wanderer that has the potential to cascade into multiple things, and things could just get really hairy. I mean, if his deck has Mana Flare, or whatever that card was, Heartbeat of Spring, and Doubling Cube, then uh, then okay, I'm done. Then obviously he's built around trying to get all that mana into play, but he's unfortunately doing it wrong. The right way to build your deck around having a lot of mana is to use artifacts, but at any rate, if he's built around that, then that means I don't want him to get access to it. So I go ahead and just condescend this, assuming that it will be safe to tap out and condescend for the full amount. X is 4 here because if I did X is, first off, if I, he's not playing colors that have 4 spike. Well, he's playing blue, but he doesn't have any mana. And secondly, if he has the green version, Elvish, I think it's Elvish Spirit Guide, if he had that and I did a condescend for 3, he could have theoretically paid the mana that way, and then I might have had a problem. So I'm going to go ahead and tuck the land and grab the Vampiric. This Ingot, I should have countered it, but I was thinking I would Rift later on. I decided not to Vampiric, however. Um, in my head, I hadn't tucked the land, so I thought the next card was land, so I don't Vampiric because I wanted the land. Luckily, the next card was Disenchant, because I had tucked the land, and Disenchant's quite good here, so I go ahead and attack his blue, and then wish that I had countered the Darksteel Ingot, because then he wouldn't have any decent blue. However, when he plays Secure Tribe Elder, at that point I realized there's no way I could have stopped his blue mana. Like, I don't want to counter and counter and counter mana sources when he has so many lands in play. So he's got 1 card, I only need 1 counter, plus 1 for his commander, which I have covered. So I just let go of the Secure Tribe Elder, hit the commander up, and then Vampiric for a backbreaker. He's tapped out, and just like before, Tezzeret fetches a card that wins the game. This time it's Winter Orb. Last time it was Crucible of Worlds. And my opponent should concede here any moment. He may not. Thanks to having drawn the mana link, I can go ahead and just cast Oloro using Tezzeret tricks. Now, the other thought I gave consideration to was, instead of getting Tezzeret and locking down his lands with Winter Orb, I could have fetched Jace and then plussed it up and tucked his commander to the bottom of the deck. That's one of the only ways that you can currently tuck a commander. You actually need a 2-card combo. You memory lapse it. They never put it back in the command zone because they know they're just going to draw it, and they'd rather cast it for a lower casting cost. But then on your turn, you Jace it to the bottom of their deck, and then they can't undo their decision. It's a little tricky there, kind of nice. But in this case, I didn't think it made as much sense. It was much better to Tezzeret, because against all that mana in play, I mean, Winter Orb is just lethal. So start beating him down with Oloro. Unfortunately, I did draw a Terminus just now, but it's not a big deal since this game's already won, and we are just going for elementary, obvious victory. So I had plus Tezzeret twice after fetching the Winter Orb, which allowed me, when I drew the Strip Mine, to immediately fetch Crucible on the next turn and lock him out of the game, essentially. He's never going to use his Doubling Cube. He's never really going to get anywhere, and because of that, he scoops it up. And lastly, I had a game against Xiron 55, who won the dice roll and is playing Malik. Is it Paragon? So this should be a good match. That's obviously like miles distant from the power of Min, being vastly more expensive and only working with instants and sorceries rather than just refilling your hand. However, the fact that he can copy cards off the library is interesting. It's not an outrageous creature to be playing, but it is clearly inferior to me. And so I know that I'm playing against a deck that has the potential to do good things, but is probably not good ultimately just because the commander kind of gives it away. So I lead off with first turn Myriad Landscape. I get to play second turn Scrubland. He's got a turn 2 Young Pyromancer. It's not too bad. I fetch Scrub here because I have, yeah, you have to realize that the Myriad Landscape is really effectively 2 islands. So I didn't really, normally, I always fetch blue, but I thought here just made more sense to get 2 colors. I need them both, potentially. I know I only have black in my hand, but let's assume that I might want to demonic tutor for a white card at some point. For example, if Young Pyromancer gets out of hand, maybe I want to get Terminus or something. So anyway, or something to trigger it. So I go ahead and get Dark Confidant Mana Vault down this turn, though, and he attacks with Young Pyromancer with boots on, and I've got no problems with that. I'm not going to block it. So, unfortunately, oh, sorry about the yawn. Unfortunately, I'm drawing too many basic lands. I've got 2 basic lands. I've got Myriad to fetch 2 more. That's 4. And I've got land tax, which then could only fetch 2 from my deck for a total of 6, which is all the basic lands I play. And then in the future, I may end up with running 5. I'm kind of thinking about, depending on how things go. So, in order to fix this problem, and to also have a way to make both Myriad Landscape and Land Tax good, which, they fight against each other, what I do is a Demonic Tutor for Calendar Gem. I pick up the other 2 lands. Then I sack Myriad Landscape, putting the 2 islands into play, and then cast Land Tax, and Calendar Gem has effectively only picked up 1 land, which is exactly all I needed picked up in order to be able to activate tax. And I've got an extra island in hand, so that I can, so here's it, Charms, gets a creature, kills my guy, moves the boots over. Oh no, I guess he forgets to do that. But anyway, I now have an extra island in hand. The 2 from Myriad Landscape are in play, but the one that I drew is not. And that lets me possibly scroll rack. All I have to do is find it. And I'm down to just the impulse to do exactly that. So he gets a deep analysis. Then he remembers to use his boots correctly. And hits me for 4. Not that it really matters. It's quite funny when he's been hitting me with Young Pyromancer and friends, and I'm at 30. I'm about to be at 40. So I impulse into Fabricate. That is perfect. I can't tax for anything, so I don't. But I thought I would Fabricate for Skorak, but for my turn, I draw a Future Sight. So I go ahead and get that down. And then when nothing materializes that's particularly useful, I do go ahead and burn the Fabricate, but because I have Future Sight in play, I don't go get Scroll Rack. Instead, I Fabricate for Winter Orb. It's the guy who's tapped out. Oh, excuse me. Sorry about all that. And I'm able to play Sensei's Divining Top off the top of my deck, and a Winter Orb, and say go. I actually had tapped my lands incorrectly this turn. If I had tapped differently, I would have been able to not cast the Sensei's Divining Top. I could have ended the turn with 2 mana, and both of them could have been blue, which would have let me play Stoic Rebuttal off the top of my deck on this turn if I needed it. But I would have had to do a number of things different that turn, which I didn't do, and, this is fine, I think. He just hits me for, what, 4? Taking me to 36, and that's after an Ancient Tomb activation. It's kind of awesome. So I decide I don't want to activate land tax to shuffle a Stoic Rebuttal into my library. Now, more painful than having not done the 2 islands last turn is that I can't, I decide to untap Tomb this turn, and I can't in my Mana Vault, so I cannot, I don't have a counter up this turn either. So I decide I'm going to try to kind of dig for one, I think. No, I don't. I see Yawgmoth's Will, and I pause and realize I think that even if he had some kind of play here, there are very few plays he could make that would actually, like, let's say he had some sort of like Mana Crypt and then he played Vandal Blast. Well, then on my turn, I'd top in response and put the Will in my hand. And then on my turn, I could will and then just put the Soul Ring, Mana Vault, Counting Gem, Winter Orb right back into play immediately. So because of that, I'm a lot less freaked out about what he could do here. He plays, and also because of the fact that if he played, say, like, I don't know, Jace, even if he tried to +2 it, I can top up the will in response. And if he did make a play like that, I can then Yawgmoth's Will into Demonic Tutor and solve my problem immediately. So, again, because I want to draw Yawgmoth's Will, I don't activate land tax during upkeep for no cards. I draw Will, and Will finds me Swords, which allows me to remove one of these creatures from the board and then cast Humility. And then, because Teferi is revealed, and just due to the fact that he's really not disrupting me at all, I go ahead and just try to slam Teferi down, because I know I win the game if it resolves. It does resolve, so I think you can see where this is going. I actually end up finding Slorak and getting my top back, or using my top to start digging again. It's funny because I wanted scroll earlier, and now it's kind of redundant. Tax Rack is one of the most powerful draw engines in the game, but it's not. For the value, it is probably the most powerful combo in the game for drawing, but not as good as Future Sight Top when you have the mana to pay for it. He goes for Ignite Memories on me, and I'm like thinking about it, and I decide. So this has the chance to do. It's going to do 3 or 1 to me. If it does 3, he can attack and kill Teferi, which sucks. Except, if he tries to attack and kill Teferi, I'm going to activate top and grab that Terminus, and then Terminus his guys away. And if he hits for 1, he couldn't even attack and kill Teferi. If he hits for 0, then great. Since he only has 2 out of, 6 cards that would actually even cause me to waste a Terminus, I decide to just let it resolve. And he reveals land, command tower specifically. And with that, and seeing the Terminus on top of my deck, the fact that he's completely locked out of the game, he gives up. So those were my games for the week. Again, this is the deck list here, for those of you that skipped to the end in order to take a look at it. I do hope you enjoyed playing. I am looking forward to testing the new Jace. Along with maybe, I have considered a few other cards as well. I have considered there's a 3 casting cost mana leak from the new set that has Scry 2 on it. The fact that it's 3 casting costs for a mana leak effect has me hesitant, but you have to always at least consider, a 3 mana counter with Scry 2. It can be a better dissolve anytime you play it. It will be. And the fact that it's also a blue and 2 colorless is interesting. But I'm not sure that the card is good enough because of the drawback of not always working. We do already have a Scry 2 counter. But I do so enjoy being able to play cards like Condescend and Dissolve. It's really nice to be able to dig and counter at the same time. So it's one of those cards that, I'm kind of kicking the idea around, and I'm going to bring it up with Brian because he's the guy that tells me, no, Nate, that's stupid. And I found over the years that listening to that advice is almost always correct. And when it's not correct, it has to be a card we disagree on. Like I have to have a powerful interest in the card. An example of that is Limdul's Vault. He does not like Limdul's Vault in this deck. I think it's absolutely incredible in here. And it's okay that we disagree, but because I normally listen to him, but strongly feel that Vault belongs, I go my own way on that particular card. But with this new counter, if he tells me it sucks, I'm probably not going to bother. The other card I want to test, like I said, is Jason. We'll see what's up with that. I have a feeling he won't tell me that that's no good. But it's one of the ones I got to bring up with him too, because I don't have the tickets for this, and I don't know what I would have to sell in order to get him. And I don't want to waste my time and my tickets if my non-existent tickets if I don't have to. So that's all I've got. Thanks for watching. We are still, Brian and I, looking down the road at doing a lot more, and I'm looking forward to that, but it'll happen when it happens. All right, I'll see you next time.